Good morning. In this discussion that's taking place right now about vegetarianism and the interests of animals, I'm noticing there's a bit of an asymmetry starting to set up, which I'm finding quite interesting. And by that I mean an asymmetry between our attitudes towards the use of animals, particularly use of animals for consumption, in situations where that is perceived to be necessary, and the use of animals in which it's considered to be unnecessary, perhaps a luxury. And our attitudes towards those are very different, and it's an asymmetry, I think, because there's it isn't a simple balance. That the value associated with consumption of animals under situations of necessity is much higher, I think, to the value that's attributed to animals for consumption for purposes of luxury. But under what circumstances that consumption is luxurious and what circumstances it's necessary, I think that's different. Because obviously, I'm a vegetarian, and I have leather belts, and I'm compromised in all kinds of other ways. But I'm sure I would eat animals if the need became great enough, and particularly if my kids were involved or somebody I cared about, were starving. I almost certainly would. Probably within 24 hours, I'd be opening tins of tuna fish, no doubt about that, or going to the chip shop and buying fish and chips. Within 48 hours, I think it's quite likely I would be going to the butcher's, probably for meat that didn't look very bloody, probably for processed meat that looked like chicken or something like that. Within 36 or 48 hours, I'd probably be slaughtering animals myself. And the longer that period of time when the necessity grew stronger and stronger, when my kids started starving, or even when I started starving, so the longer period of time that went, the further up the food chain I think I'd probably go, the more cute animals I would go. Within a week I would be killing dogs and cats, I'm pretty sure. Within 2 weeks, human corpses would probably fall prey to my knife and fork. So, and I think I can understand that when other people do it. In fact, when humans have been put into situations where they've had to consume human corpses or eat dogs and cats and those kind of things because they're starving, or just when their living conditions currently oblige them to do that, when they live in situations in which other kinds of food isn't available, we can kind of excuse that, and I can feel that excusing going on in myself because it's perceived as necessary. But when it's not perceived as necessary, that becomes very different, doesn't it? And a lot of the consumption of animals clearly is not necessary right now. And again, that necessity stretches out quite a long way. Personally, I would say, because of my own particular biases and feelings, I would say that in where I live, certainly in the West, where other kinds of food are readily available, I think it's never necessary, personally. But many people would disagree with that. But even people who disagree with that would, I think, recognise that sometimes it's just eating animals for the sake of it. Because sometimes there are particular delicacies to do with animals, which I think pretty much anybody would say that's not necessary. If your tiger testicles, I think, are consumed in some parts of the world, or have been, for medicinal purposes, I would say something like anchovies on pizza. There's no real nutritional value in the anchovies people put on a pizza, is there? They're there not exactly as a luxury, but they're there. There's kind of surplus to nutritional requirements, certainly, aren't they? So there's a whole spectrum, I think, there of consumption, which is really to do with luxury, not necessity. But these things are imbalanced, I would also suggest. This is where this thing about asymmetry is, I think. The amount of consumption that you can make because it's necessary, the amount of allowances that we give to people once we recognise that necessity is involved, hugely outweighs that which applies to luxury, it seems to me. We don't give a lot of leeway to luxury, and again, quite rightly so, because I think on some level we do feel that the relief of I don't know what the word would be, but the relief of those kinds of needs, the release of those deprivations, starvation being most obvious, relief from that is so much more important than the provision of what on the surface might appear to be an equivalent amount of pleasure. you know, the steak that you give to a starving person is much more valuable in moral terms than the same steak that you give to a person who is well fed but just happens to want steak that evening. Do you know what I mean? The value of the meat itself, the value of the moral weight of this same item changes according to whether it's used for the release of deprivation as opposed to the enhancement of someone's pleasures. Okay, so that's something I'm thinking about right now. Thanks very much, and goodbye.